And we're live, everybody. I actually made it. Welcome in. I had to close my curtains. What's today? December 28th, Thursday, 1:02 p.m. Central. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joined by Mimi, Hans, Alex, Tony, community members. Thank you all so much for joining me on this a very special year-end episode of whatever the heck this is called, Community Forum Hangout Session. Thank you so much. We're going to hit some Tesla topics today. We're going to do a year in review as well in the latter half of the conversation. Welcome in from YouTube. Welcome in from X as well. We're able to pull all the comments from X now into StreamYard. And producer wife, the lovely producer wife, will be in the background producing and bringing up comments. But before we go any further, I'd like to make an announcement for my YouTube folks. The X folks probably already know this. Producer wife and I are expecting a baby boy on May 25th, 2024. And he's going to be Daddy's gaming buddy. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's been a trip for us. Woo! There it is. Celebrate, everybody. We've had family in town for the last few days. And yeah, we did a little gender reveal for them and everything. So, but yeah, we're very excited. And yeah, it's going to be super, super awesome. And I couldn't have shared this moment with a better partner. So thank you very much to my lovely wife for giving me a son. Thank you. It's very nice of you. All right. So let's go ahead and hit some topics here. Let's go ahead and pull up the Giga India story from Tesla when you get a chance here, producer wife, on the post. This broke earlier this morning at 2:01 a.m. Central. Tesla is reportedly expected to set up its India manufacturing plant in Gujarat, with an official announcement reportedly expected at the Vibrant Gujarat Summit in January 2024. And this is from the Ahmedabad Mirror. When you get a chance, pull up the actual article as well. There is Elon's face with a Model 3. And then if you can zoom in for me a little bit on some of the text. Negotiations with Tesla set up manufacturing plant in Gujarat in last leg, announcement likely in Vibrant Summit. So this is something that has been rumored for a while now. I think like the Tesla Giga India rumor started with when the Prime Minister of India, I think, visited New York, and then Elon was like, sometime soon you'll hear more about this or something like that. So now it seems like we're getting closer to the moment of this actually happening. So any thoughts from the panel on this first glance? Any commentary that anybody would like to share? Go ahead, Mimi.
Well, it has been rumored for a while, and I've thought for a long time that Tesla, they want to have another base in Asia apart from China, because China being so insecure with Taiwan and the future and everything. But I would really love to see this deal, these negotiations, because I still think that India is, they've been so particular. They want all the suppliers to be based in India. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to see the details. But Elon seems pretty chummy with Moody, and they've met on several occasions. So I hope it's true. It's exciting.
Yeah. I would be surprised if this doesn't actually happen, because it's been rumored, like, the whole if there's smoke there's fire sort of thing that we all talk about all the time. And yeah, it would be shocking if it's not true, especially now that they've I wonder how much of the compact car timeline is influencing how quickly this is going to come on board too, because it seems like it's been going on in the background for a while now. Ever since the Elon Musk biography came out, we had some insight into the fact that this has been in the works for a while. They've been working on it in Giga Texas for a few months now. And so I think it just makes sense for India to sort of get going and start getting that car to market as well. Hans, Tony, or Alex, any thoughts on this announcement? Let's see who comes off mute first. There we go. Oh, uh-oh. Let's try again. Let's see. Da-da-da.
Well, I guess I'll just say that there's another electric vehicle company that I've been following that entered India recently called Gogoro, and because of that, I've seen how they've set up their manufacturing in Maharashtra. So for that reason, I thought that if when Tesla gets into India, it would also be in Maharashtra, but Gujarat's right next door. And also in the process of looking into that, I was looking into what the electric vehicle market in India looks like. And as far as I can tell, there's really only one manufacturer, a domestic manufacturer, that's Tata. And they have an electric vehicle that I think it has about 200 miles of range, and they're selling it for between 17,000 and 20,000 US. And from what I remember seeing, I was reading about this like just a couple weeks ago. They're on track to sell like 25,000 or 30,000 of those vehicles this year. So I'm not sure if that's an indicator for what the size of the market would be for a vehicle at that price range, but it does give us some ideas and some targets. So I'm sure part of the deal of going into India is like part and parcel. In exchange for us setting up this manufacturing, will you ease up tariffs for the vehicles that Tesla can already produce now? And those would most likely be vehicles exported to India from the EU, from Giga Berlin, or from Fremont. I doubt they would want vehicles from Shanghai coming into their market, just reasons, you know. So that kind of gives you, like, if you can sort of deduce, well, if there's a market for 30,000 vehicles that are at that $20,000, $25,000 price range, does that mean that there's a market for 15,000 Model Ys imported that could start immediately? I don't know, but that's like another thing to think about, because like, you know, obviously the average income in India is much, much lower than these other countries that where Model Ys are selling, but India is just a huge place. So there is going to be a certain number of like upper middle class people who would want to buy Model Ys, maybe.
Yeah, this is a interesting comment too from Sanju. Gujarat has plenty of mineral deposits, which could be reason for choice of location. Surat is well known for this. I'm super ignorant when it comes to that part of the world. I know almost nothing. So something like this is an interesting tidbit. I don't know if any of you guys have heard anything about that being a thing that's, you know, one of the main reasons why that would make sense. But if that's the case, it shortens the time of getting raw materials to the factory. I know it's something that Tesla continually works at, is getting the supply chain to be as small and as short as they possibly could make it. And so something like that makes perfect sense. And it kind of mirrors some of the decisions they made around, or the rumors around the one in Canada as well. There's supposed to be one in Canada or something because it's close to the raw materials. I know the one province was trying to make a deal with Tesla to have a factory there, but nothing has happened there. So Alex, you came off mute as well. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I did some looking at the car market in India, and I think the average selling price of a vehicle in India is like around $9,000 US. So it's significantly the lower end of tiny little golf carts and rickshaws and tiny little cars that sell in India. So plus, if you've ever seen pictures of the traffic patterns there, FSD would be a whole new world in India. So trying to get FSD in, and because the big game changer is transportation as a service. If you can run the robotaxi network there, then you bring that cost per mile, and you can really make a disruption. But to do that, you need the vehicles to last on those roads. And if you've seen the roads, the infrastructure is not in great shape. So India never really made sense to me to build vehicles there, like cathode materials maybe, or mega packs. But I don't understand how the vehicle market makes sense, because you can't. I just don't see them selling 500,000, 1 million cars a year there.
Hans, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would echo a lot of those things. They've said there's going to be a factory, but we don't necessarily know what type of factory yet. And so that's the biggest question that I have moving forward, is what product are we going to see rolling out there? And I think that Megapack obviously makes a lot of sense. From one dimension, it may be hard for them to get the battery materials. That's just something that China has a stronghold on. So that's one of the things that I'd like to see. But then the other thing, if it's not that, then the only thing that really makes sense to me is seeing them come out with the next gen vehicle platform. And so we may not see the announcement of the factory for a little while, if that's going to be the case, if they're going to make next gen vehicle there. But man, I would be surprised to see them moving forward with that basically in a timeline that is at the same time that they're ramping up Shanghai for probably something very similar. So, yeah, very curious to see what the products are that they're planning to produce in India.
Maybe
Well, and if they go,
you just muted yourself like, after you came off mute. Come on,
sorry,
you're a pro, Mimi. Gee.
my God, I'm not used to this. Another challenge is building out the charging network, because from what I understand, that's a huge problem, and with the infrastructure being really bad. I guess with solar energy, that could solve a lot of problems, but it's a huge country, and if the demand for EV is going to go up, they need to charge their cars. So we're talking about a long investment, long term.
But I do think what's interesting about that, though, is I know, like, on the whole, India's infrastructure, their GDP per capita is not where, say, the U.S. or a lot of the Western nations are, but it's still a country of 1.4 billion people. And I think if the United States is 1/5 the size of India, so I feel like if it's even 3% of the population of India actually can take advantage of, say, an EV or that type of sort of mode of transport, I feel like that's still going to be a sizable market. Like 3% of India is equivalent to 50% of, actually probably more than 50% of Sweden or like the Scandinavian countries potentially, right? Well, I don't know what the exact math is, but you kind of know what I'm saying there. Do you guys think
And
there
the
is
middle
that
class
could
is
be
growing. The
Yeah.
middle class is growing. So
Yeah, and I know Modi has a ton of plans to. It seems like from a political perspective, the country is doing a lot of things to get itself. It's almost like they're in a competition with China. You can kind of tell they're in a friendly competition with China to become that. The long-term leader of the world. By investing their time now to get there. So I feel like what's interesting about this Tesla move is I wonder how big of a role Tesla is going to play in India being able to achieve that through battery manufacturing, through energy generation, through autonomous transportation. It's almost like they're trying to get to the ground level to set the foundation so that as India grows, Tesla can grow with India as well. I don't know. That's just, kind of what I'm hypothesizing here. Because they could be in every single one of those things as long as India ends up going to where they want to go, Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, and I'll just add in, there's a couple of other products that we haven't spoken about that also could be things that are manufactured there. They may be doing Optimus Bot there, and they may also be doing solar roof there. Those are like, if you want to lower manufacturing costs, if you're looking for something that's high scale, you're going to have to build out an entirely new supply base anyways. You're looking for somewhere with good labor costs. Maybe you want to diversify away from China. It could be that there are other products on the roadmap that they're planning to start first there, rather than just copy pasting another auto factory.
I'll just add that I agree with I think it would make more sense for Tesla to focus on energy products in India. It seems like that's a feeling shared amongst this forum. But to piggyback on what Alex was saying about like just the lower cost of vehicles in India, like the majority of vehicles sold in India are not cars, they're motorcycles. And as far as I know, and as far as I've seen, Tesla has no interest in getting into manufacturing motorcycles at all. And that's partly driven by Elon, but it's also partly just the nature of the company to be focused on safety. And I think that is something that will really limit their market for vehicles in India if they don't get into motorcycles. I mean, you could say that maybe like with GDP growth and economic development, that could change. But there's just things structurally. I mean, I personally haven't traveled to India, but I've traveled to the Philippines. And from friends of mine who've traveled to both places say it's pretty similar. It's just motorcycles are just the way to get around in a country like that. Like the infrastructure supports it. You can get through traffic so much easier. But one out of the box thought that occurred to me is, could there be a market for like more business to business stuff for Tesla in terms of manufacturing components that it could sell to other vehicle manufacturers that are maybe making vehicles that Tesla doesn't want to make, like power electronics, motors, obviously cells and batteries and stuff like that. But that's an idea that occurred to me like some days ago.
And I also think, and then here's from Mitt on X. Again, we have StreamYard hooked up with X, which is sick. Just a thought, idea with producing in India would be to circumvent China problem. That's an interesting angle as well. China problem, I mean, the way I perceive the China problem is an overdependence on the country. There might be some tensions with Taiwan in the near future that could cause some issues with U.S.-China relations, and just diversifying the business all in all for the sort of APAC, like Asia-Pacific region. Partnering with a country that's going to allow you to really crank out the core components for electric vehicles and energy storage is going to be super important. So that's a very interesting angle. The other one that I'm also thinking of too is that depending how, how accommodating India or another, some of these other countries are with Elon's vision for infrastructure in the future, could it be a place where the Boring Company actually takes hold, right? And things of that nature, where if infrastructure is really the thing that's lacking, then okay, Tesla, Boring Company, Starlink, these things come in and they take the country to the 22nd century, right? Because we're gonna be there pretty soon. So it's just a lot of interesting things there with this move. Any other thoughts on Giga India before we hit Toyota?
The Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. So, like Tony said, I think energy is going to be a big proponent of what they do, because that's the need. Getting that energy infrastructure built out, and even if they have the supercharger network, and the motorcycles go electric and can charge at their superchargers, and just build out that sustainable energy with solar panels and mega packs, and building out a more stable grid. So
cool. All right, let's do. Actually, I want to hit. Before going to Toyota, I want to hit this Xiaomi SU7 story from China, which I think is super interesting. So go ahead and pull that up. My lovely producer wife and soon to be also producer baby. That's not born yet, but we'll call him producer. I saw the comments for producer baby, which is hilarious. Amazing. So this is from Sawyer Merritt on X News. China's biggest smartphone maker, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Xiaomi. Is that right? Xiaomi? I don't know if somebody knows the proper pronunciation, but we'll go with that. Has unveiled their first ever car, an EV called the Xiaomi SU7. They said they are aiming to become one of the world's top 5 automakers. It will have a 150 kilowatt hour battery, which is about 50% larger than Model S or X in the Tesla right now. Cell to body, integrating battery into vehicle body. So it's sort of similar to the way Tesla's doing it with the front rear castings and the sort of structural battery pack, more of that than anything. Hyper casting, which I think is another buzzword for giga casting. Up to 745 miles of CLTC range. CLTC is the Chinese standard, which is significantly more forgiving than, say, the Euro cap or the one out here in the States. 800 volt system, which is what the Cybertruck has. Autonomous driving capability, and goes on sale in a few months. And go ahead and pull up a few pictures. Just click on them and let's filter through them. It actually, I saw one of the comments, I think from MKBHD's sort of thoughts on this. This looks like a Porsche Panamera with McLaren headlights. So it's a very interesting sort of look, but it actually doesn't look bad. I think the front's a little too much for me, honestly, but go ahead and flip through. We'll look at the profile as well. Pretty good looking car. Keep going. Let's look from the back. 1,000 times better than the Hyundai Ioniq 6, in my opinion. That thing is a disaster. This thing actually looks great. Go ahead and give me another one. And then that's just a thing that they're saying it's going to do. So, I think this is super interesting. Now we have smartphone makers getting into the EV game in China. Any reactions, thoughts that folks want to share on this? I have a few, but I'm going to let you guys go first. Go ahead, Alex.
150 kilowatt hour battery. That's a massive. That at $100 a kilowatt, it's
a big boy. That's
15,000 just for the battery pack. So So this final sale price is going to be like Model S range. You're like, there's not a whole lot of market up there. Lucid's trying to get up there. The Taycan's up there. The Model S is up there. I don't know. They can't sell that many up at that price point.
Any other thoughts?
I can't remember where I heard this, but I think it might have been one of the guests on that auto line after hours show. Like they had Sandy Monroe on, and they were another one of the guests. But he said that it's easier for a technology company to learn how to make cars than for a car company to learn how to make technology. And obviously, I was in reference to like the predicament of GM, et cetera, but it applies in reverse here with Xiaomi.
That's a great call out. 100% agree there. Hans, Mimi? Hans?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I immediately thought of is this is actually a win for Apple's rumored car project. You know, if we do see a Chinese phone manufacturer make EVs successfully, Alex's point is very well taken. We have yet to see, you know, can they produce it? This is still a concept car. Prototypes for easy production is hard. But that said, if Xiaomi is successful in making this car and they can get to volume and they can produce them, you know, even close to profitably, then maybe that means that Foxconn can do something similar, and maybe eventually Apple will get their head out of their rear and finally bring this thing to market, or stop pursuing it. One of the two. Like, you know, this on again, off again thing is like whiplash. So, anyways, that was my immediate reaction to it.
Mimi?
Well, I hope they succeed. I think it's a pretty cool car. And I love the color. I wish Tesla had a color like that. But the more EVs, the better. But I'm not saying anything until we see a ramped production, because there are so many new models, but they never get anywhere. Well, at least the majority of them. So, but good luck.
The other thing that I would add is just, you know, it's very interesting to see how fast these Chinese automakers are at following Tesla in adopting new manufacturing technologies. And so, you know, we've seen lots and lots of different automakers adopting gigacastings, to see the structural battery packs that, you know, where are the announcements from GM and Ford talking about their designs for incorporating these manufacturing technologies into their vehicles? Nowhere to be found. And so you can see just the direction that things are headed, that once again, this is another just piece of evidence that the Chinese invasion is coming for the United States. It's going to be inevitable. Like, we're going to relive the Japanese invasion of the 1980s all over again. And unfortunately, we've got, you know, domestic companies that are stuck in the past. They have their head in the sand, and they just are not able to move quickly enough. And the fact that Tesla started these, like, they should have had a head start. They're here. They had access to seeing all of this technology, and they have refused to move. And so, yeah, it's like, it's a global open competitive marketplace. Obviously, the US is not going to just open the doors wide to importing vehicles manufactured in China without having tariffs and stuff. That doesn't mean there's not creative ways around that. And that's exactly what we saw with the Japanese invasion, that, okay, sure, they'll move production to the United States, and they'll, you know, or do creative badging. You know, they'll buy GM when GM goes bankrupt, and it'll be a, you know, a Geely GM product, or any other number of things. So yeah, just you know, it's sad on the one hand, but on the other hand, for the consumer, it's exciting that we're actually going to get affordable electric vehicles that are decent products, instead of continuing to get basically dirt from the old guard.
I saw Tony and Alex go off mute as well. Do one of you guys want to go? Oh,
I was going to make the same point that Hans made, that companies like Xiaomi are starting to copy Tesla's homework. But we aren't seeing the GMs and the Fords and the VWs do that because they already have manufacturing facilities. And something like Xiaomi, when they're doing a ground up facility, then they can start to copy Tesla on like a clean slate facility. But if you already have a facility that's producing, shutting it down and completely rebuilding with the gigacastings and all of the new methods, it's much more difficult to refurbish than it is to ground up with a new product.
Tony?
The only thing I was going to add was just piggyback off Han's comment about like if Apple were to get Foxconn to build them a car, it just made me think, tied to our last topic. Foxconn is already making electric motorcycles in India, in Maharashtra right now. So maybe Apple will make a car in India before GM, etc. get on this boat.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of y'all make fantastic points, and I agree with all of them. I think the reminder for me that really sticks out is just how screwed is legacy auto here. Like, it's so obvious that there is all these companies that are taking the correct approach of building an EV, starting from the ground up, not relying on existing assets and investments you've made that are not really that compatible to an electric vehicle. There's way too much waste in a gas car manufacturing line. There's way too much labor. There's way too many parts. The factories are not laid out and optimized for electric vehicle manufacturing. Completely different set of talent. It's a different customer experience. It's not, oh, look at my V8. There's nothing wrong with the V8 sound. I love a V8 sound, but EVs don't care about the EV8 sound. It's a very different driving experience. It's much more a technology type of experience. It's much more closer to a phone than a car. And I think, and especially as we move to an autonomous future. So what's very interesting about this is that I think we're starting to also see a shift in sentiment from, let's say, the not insane person like we are that's in the weeds of this thing. I'm seeing more and more voices coming forward. For example, Jason Camisa, who's a fantastic auto journalist. He works at Haggerty. He's somebody that is super into the entire auto world, especially on the gas car world as well, but he's really exposed to all of it. And even people like him are coming forward and say legacy automakers are in big trouble because of Tesla and the Chinese automakers. Sandy Monroe has been saying this forever. You have pieces from CNBC coming out, or CNBS, depending what your favorite acronym is, where I forget the gentleman's name, Sullivan. I think his last name's Sullivan. I forget his first name. Brian Sullivan, I think that's right. But one of the anchors there, he's been sort of on this thing that he's studying, where it's like, hey, in the United States, the growth from electric vehicles is not really that people want an EV, is that people want a Tesla. So like it proves, again, from a different angle, people that are not into the weeds like we are, they're seeing the shift starting to happen. And so when you have stuff like Xiaomi coming out and announcing this car, and the countless other Chinese EV makers announcing and actually building their cars, BYD is going to probably become the largest EV manufacturer in the next couple of years, depending on how Tesla's ramp of the compact car goes, potentially. So it's just all culminating. It's all coming together into this sort of thing that looks like legacy auto is incredibly screwed outside of one or two automakers, unless they do something drastic. The Chinese EV manufacturers are going to be in pole position, but most of the profits will be had by Tesla. And that's what the picture is looking like. So it's, the analogy we've used on this channel before is that Apple is Tesla, Samsung is your BYDs, your Xiaomis, all these other, your Neos, and all these other automakers. Well, they'll be very successful, but they'll work on very different margin structures. Whereas Tesla will be able to sell its services, things like full self-driving, entertainment in the car. You got the energy manufacturing, which nobody's talking about, the batteries and the solar. You have the bot, which let's not even talk about that. And that's what it's starting to look like. And I think it's being recognized by more and more people. And it's going to be fascinating to see how we transition into that, because in my opinion, that seems like the likeliest outcome. And I think everyone on this panel would agree with that. But if you disagree, let me know. Okay. Any other thoughts on the Xiaomi before we move on to Toyota's very not covered recall? Yeah, should we do it? All right. Bring it up, producer wife and producer baby. News. Daihatsu, the Japanese automaker owned by Toyota, has halted all domestic production after admitting it forged the results of safety tests for its vehicles for more than 30 years. So go ahead and click on the article from everyone's favorite news website, CNN. Toyota-owned automaker halts Japan. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Let's read the first sentences and zoom in for me if you don't mind. Thank you very much. This is from Hong Kong and Tokyo. Daihatsu, the Japanese automaker owned by Toyota, has halted domestic production. The brand, best known for manufacturing small passenger cars, has stopped output at all 4 of its Japanese factories as of Tuesday, including one of its headquarters in Osaka. The shutdown will last through at least the end of January, affecting roughly 9,000 employees who work in domestic production, according to the representative. And so this sort of item, it's interesting because when I was glancing mainstream media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it, this wasn't really at the forefront. It was sort of like, I don't know if you guys saw this differently, but it didn't have the same level of coverage or the same level of, say, push by legacy media sources like the Tesla recall had with the software update. Where they just needed to make a few things bigger for autopilot. I couldn't really find much about this, and this one was a concerted effort to hide safety results for 30 years that the company has now admitted it has been doing. So I think, I don't know, my thoughts here is that this is yet another example of, I think, the unfair treatment that Tesla gets from legacy media sources, or it could just be that people don't find that very interesting and people find the Tesla stuff much more interesting and legacy media sources know this. But I feel like something like that, I forget which one of you guys said this. I saw this coming from somebody. Imagine if that came from Tesla. Imagine if Tesla had that actually happening to them. Tesla has been forging range estimates and safety results for the last 10 years. Boy, would that be a wonderful story for legacy media companies to run. So any thoughts on this from the panel? Anything?
Good. I suppose the only mitigating factor could be, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but from what I read briefly, I think that factory only makes vehicles that are sold in Japan. So perhaps, you could make the argument like, to Western media, this doesn't affect Western audiences because none of their cars are going to get recalled. And also, I believe that factory makes like the K cars. And you think about what the K cars are, how small they are. So like I could imagine a scenario where there's just, for years and years, everyone pretended like, oh yeah, they're perfectly safe. But safety is inherently the thing you compromise to make the car that little, And also the margins for safety might be lower for a car that has a max speed of 60 miles an hour, or maybe is only meant to be used in cities where the max speed is like 40 miles an hour, But this is pretty bad. I'm just trying to be as generous as possible.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. My rebuttal to that would be, how come the union stuff that's happening with Tesla in Sweden gets so much coverage in the Western nations? Right? But I think it's a fair point too. I think what you made is a fair point, but it seems unfair. Go ahead, Mimi.
Of course, Sweden is interesting. That was all.
Says the Swedish person. Thanks for IKEA.
I was, yeah. Well, I saw the headline. I Googled, and I didn't even get this piece of news about Daihatsu because I Googled Toyota, and I got the recall of all the airbag, 1.12 million cars and 1 million was in the US. So I guess that would be more interesting. But of course, I can just say one thing. Elon, it's Elon. He's out there. Everybody knows. How many other CEOs do people know the name of? Nobody in Sweden knows the name of any of Mary, Bara, on all of them. No one, but everybody on this planet knows who Elon is.
People in Sweden don't know who Mary Bara is?
No.
What?
No, but we are not interested in
The
GM.
greatest leader of all time
I
is not known
know,
by
I
this.
know. But that
Wow.
news never reached us.
Oh well.
Well, I guess that after Biden talked
Try
about
getting
her,
Starlink.
a few people know about her, and before that, zero, except for Tesla nerds who know everything about her. But I mean, Tesla is interesting in the and like you said, Tesla is the big company. Tesla is the future. Tesla is the only competition there is. Therefore, Tesla is interesting.
I think that's such a great point. The fact that it gets so much attention from the media, I think in itself sort of proves that the company is playing in a much bigger arena than a lot of people still are not giving it credit for, because it's able to command that type of attention. It's able to command that type of quote unquote not even quote unquote legit clickbait. What is going on here? Okay. All right, give us what's. Please tell us. You have a joke. I know you have a joke because you have something on your head. So go ahead.
Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the joke, but and I can't turn off my stupid phone, so I apologize for that too. Shut up.
I think it's some kind of stand-in for a Jewish head.
No, not that. It was to keep my head warm, honestly, but just to keep it clear and to make it appropriate, I graciously gave up my seat to a woman on the bus yesterday. That's how I lost my job as a bus driver.
Wow. Okay, that was pretty. Okay,
It's so nice. It's so nice to have you back, Richard.
8 out of 10.
I was
That was pretty
listening
good.
the whole time. You guys were wonderful, really.
Thank you. What thoughts do you have? Share us your thoughts.
On what?
What you were listening to. We're talking about Toyota's and Daihatsu's thing in Japan. Did you see that, where they were hiding test results for 30 years for their safety stuff?
I didn't, but I was going to comment on what you guys were talking about before, and I always think of that cliff. I don't know if you talked about that. I might have missed that. That curve we talked about, where if there's
The
not
Valley of
enough,
Death?
if there's not enough production, that it's bad. And the United States is that. At this point in time, that is what it is. And I know you guys were talking about Xiaomi and that stuff. So I've heard of them producing a car for at least 3 years, 4 years. So when you were distinguishing Apple or their lack of production, to me, Xiaomi sounds like Apple, because they've been talking about doing it for a long time in a highly technological way, and they haven't. And I think the distinction, I think Hans mentioned it about Japan and China. I think there's a huge distinction. When Japan had a dominance or a huge presence in the United States, they were not deemed an adversary. They may have been an economic adversary, but they weren't a pariah to the country. China is. And again, I think that's the reason why Tesla is protected in China, because that is really the only means by which China thinks it can have entry into the United States. And to the extent they would ever exclude Tesla from China, I think that would be a door closing on them entering the United States. But I don't think that's an easy road to hoe. I think they may end up selling a lot more units in Europe, where they might be a lot more price conscious. That's kind of my thoughts.
That's a great point. Any thoughts there? I think that's one that we've thrown around before, but I think it's becoming more true by the day, especially as because the chairman what's his title, right? He said when he was in California that he wanted, or that the messaging was he wants no souring relations with the U.S. Basically, was like, they just want to grow, they want to be friendly and all that stuff. And I wonder if that's really in line with exactly what you described. We're getting clues from the Chinese leader himself that this is a good outcome. This is the kind of outcome they would want, and boy, would Tesla benefit from that, because they basically allows them to. They never have to worry about their business in China for the next decade or two, as Chinese automakers ramp up their efforts.
I was going to say I would figure the next 5 years, the supply of EVs in the United States in numbers is either going to come from Tesla or China. That's it. No American in any large numbers unless things dramatically change. So,
Yeah, I agree 100%. Go ahead.
Or the,
go ahead, Tony.
Maybe some of the American manufacturers like Ford, or probably Ford is the only one at this point, decides to start getting components from Tesla. Maybe that's one way that like the volumes could ramp up. If Tesla only had to like, if Tesla's 2x vehicles but 4x components, and then Ford just does the rest of the vehicle assembly.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say is, and again, I don't know if you guys discussed this, but the thing that has come to my mind the most is that Tesla will be a part of all the other American automobile manufacturers. And as time goes on, I think their role will grow the more these guys struggle and the more they try to circumvent the need to do their own, production, design, etc., because they're not very good at it, number one, and they'll piss away billions of dollars doing that.
So the whole notion of like powered by Tesla, charged by Tesla, the vision by Tesla, that's sort of the moniker that's going to be the thing that's going to be thrown around by these makers. Alex, Tony, Mimi. Or Alex, Mimi, Tony.
The when Tesla did all the legwork on the 48 volt system, they went to the other automakers and they published, like, this is how you build a 48 volt system. And that way you can have the massive windshield wiper, you can have rear wheel steering, you can do all these things when you have a 48 volt system instead of a 12 volt system. And they just gave that away to all the manufacturers. And when they get the unbox process, I expect the same thing. They'll send a binder. This is how you should build a car quickly and cheaply, so you can reduce the prices of vehicles to the point where people will buy them. And the Chinese will do it if the OEMs don't.
Mimi?
Yeah. One point you said about Americans being hesitant to buy Chinese cars, and I think that's true for very many in Europe too. Maybe not as many, but I mean, we have the same discussions about software and TikTok and everything, and there's definitely a big group not wanting to buy Chinese cars. So it's totally different than when the Japanese tidal wave came. I agree with that. But I also agree that I think that Tesla will be in all cars. Just look at Volkswagen. If they could license the software, I mean, they don't get anywhere with that. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're just postponing, and I mean, they're going to be lost if they don't do anything pretty soon. They hire 1,000 and then they get rid of 800 and nothing is happening. So I think that is the only chance for a lot of the manufacturers, that is to buy stuff from Tesla or license it.
Tony?
Well, related to this, like, will other manufacturers buy or license parts from Tesla? At this point, outlook, it seems like Ford might be the most likely to do that. But I've honed this own theory about when I look at the OEMs exist right now, most likely to survive this transition. And I have this weird sort of bank shot theory that it could be Toyota, because, if Tesla is all the way out front with the first movers advantage, Toyota has the last movers advantage. And I think of how much money in R&D has GM, Ford, VW basically poured into developing electric vehicles that have gone down more or less the wrong path. And that's going to be like the sunk cost that keeps them or delays them from just accepting that Tesla has the right technology. We should just buy Tesla's technology, license it, whatever. Whereas someone like Toyota, they haven't poured any money into the wrong path because they haven't even been trying with the EVs. Where their position right now is to make money the next 2 to 5 years. So what if in like 3-ish years, they're really well positioned, they have like the funds and the wherewithal to just go say, hey, like our next generation of electric vehicles should just be using Tesla technology. And they're not burdened by all this other stuff that they spent or wasted resources trying to make.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The other thing that I worry about is, as this is sort of on Richard's point here, as we go into next year, into 2025, the comment was U.S. EV manufacturing is really going to come from Tesla, in the probably in the long term, honestly, and then Chinese companies. And you think about the EV tax credit that was put in place last year, or this year, really. What percentage of that tax credit is going to go to Tesla? I'm going to guess probably 80% plus, right? So now you're going to have this narrative that's going to be very easy. It's going to be very easy to sell to the public as well. That's going to say, oh, look at this. Tesla is, again, taking taxpayer money and funding their EV thing. They're being bailed out by the taxpayer or whatever. Look at this. It's a rich person's toy, and look at how we're funding it. But then the crazy thing is that the only reason why they're taking advantage of that credit is because they're the only ones who have the manufacturing capability to do so. And that was like the whole point of the credit. Now, unless manufacturers start to really start their manufacturing processes, start including batteries that are big enough to take advantage of that EV tax credit in their hybrids, which I think is really the only way for these folks to actually play in this arena and take advantage of the EV tax credit as we transition away from gas cars. But I don't even know if that's going to happen, especially if you have a compact car that's coming from Tesla that's going to be $25,000 starting potentially, and you have the Cybertruck ramping up, you have the Model Y ramping up. I don't know. It's just it's yet another thing that might become an attack vector, let's say, on Tesla in the coming years as well, which I kind of worry about, because they are going to take that lion's share. And they are going to take a majority of that EV tax credit. So,
I was going to address that really quickly. I think that at some point in time, especially if all the American automobile manufacturers struggle, that at least a portion, if not the entire tax credit, is going to be revoked. I just think there'll be pressure not to favor, just kind of along what you said, not favor Tesla when nobody else is benefiting. Then why do we need it for if it's not doing what it's supposed to do, which was to encourage electric vehicles? If it's not doing that, then why it exists? The other point I wanted to mention, I think Tony was mentioning about, or you guys were talking about Toyota and their position. What you can't exclude is all the Japanese manufacturers, based upon the new emission standards in China, they lost a boatload of business. They can't sell their cars in China. That's going to cost them. I mean, that's not an insignificant cost and a loss of future revenue. So that's going to handicap them from going forward, I think.
That's a great point. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just curious. Have any of you guys ever heard of the Nissan Sakura? Have you ever seen this or come across this vehicle? It was the best-selling electric car in Japan. They only make it and sell it in Japan, and it's basically an electric K car. And I just heard about that recently, and I thought it was really interesting.
Let me go ahead and pull up the sucker here. It looks like a little, it looks like a Nissan Cube, like had relations with a Mini Cooper of sorts. Let's see.
It's more comparable to like a Hongguang Mini EV than any other EV we would see here. But it's just interesting that's, it ramped up a lot in Japan. They sold a lot of them this past year. I don't remember the exact number, but
look at how small those tires
are. Japanese can make those.
Look at how cute it is. Okay, no, never heard of this car. Very cool.
By the way, I ordered a chicken and the egg on Amazon yesterday. I'll let you know which comes first. Oh,
nice. That's classic Bob right there. Not legal advice, dropping the knowledge, the jokes. All right. Any other commentary on these topics before we move into our 2023 year in review? And then we'll do Q&A after. Any thoughts? No? Okay, cool. All right. So let's recap 2023. I don't even know how this is going to go. I'll go around the horn and then we'll just talk about what were the highlights of this year, the lowlights of this year. What are the things that you see coming up? I don't know, whatever. We'll figure out what it is. Let me go first, though, because I do want to shout this out. This is something that I'm super proud of my community for. We created this fund at the beginning of this year ish, where we pulled together part of the revenue from the channel. So it was basically half of the community streams we were doing for the beginning of the year, and then as those became less and less, I shifted it over to my basically donating my. So every person that has subscribed on YouTube, basically I donated 100% of that revenue to a fund, and then we were able to donate $6,700 to Finca. And the community voted on this charity as the group that would get the funds, and we were able to disperse this a week or so ago. So yeah, thank you guys very much for voting for this, folks. Thank you very much for raising this funds. This is really from every single person that has subscribed to the channel. This all comes from you. And I really, really appreciate everybody here donating and also choosing the fund here that we send the money to for 2024. What the hell did I just do? Sorry. For 2024, I was initially going to do 50% of X and YouTube subscriber revenue, but I think I'm just going to up it to 100%, honestly. So starting in 2024, if you become a member of YouTube through subscribing to the channel, or you become a subscriber of the X platform, I'll donate 100% of the basically the revenue that comes in from that to a community fund, and then every single person who's in the community will get to decide at the end of the year in 2024 which fund should receive essentially the money we raise as a community. So thank you guys very much for that. I think this is a cool thing that we're doing, and I think in 2024 the number will be bigger, and then the goal by the end of the decade is hopefully we'll have a shit ton of money to send somebody. So I think that's the ultimate goal here. So thank you all very much. Super cool.
Thank you.
It's you guys. Thank you. Yay! Cool community. All right, Mimi, you go first. Pressure's on. What do you want to review?
Okay, I was thinking about what was the most important thing that happened, and I kind of got stuck with the charging standard. It's not the most profitable thing. It's not that exciting, but brand after brand deciding to adapt the standard, that goes in line with everything we talked about up till now about Tesla's dominance, that Tesla is surprisingly leading this EV revolution, and everybody is way behind and they're following. Like they will be in many different areas.
Yeah.
If they want to survive.
Hans, I saw you were coming off mute there for a second.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we're going around round table style. There's so many things this year. So I would say one of the fun things that's not necessarily 100% Tesla related is it's been really fun to get to come on these community forum chats and just like build this community all this year long. And I just want to thank you for making this a forum and an opportunity that's available to people this year. And yeah, whatever that ends up looking like for next year, it's just been a real honor and a treat to be able to do this with everyone. On the Tesla front, man, there's so many huge things. I would say the biggest ones in my mind are just for the future, Master Plan Part 3, and then what we learned about FSD and the bot from CVPR, and then seeing the bot progress this year. The V12 demo that Elon did, and hopefully we'll see that rolling out here soon. I think that those are just incredibly consequential things. And I did love Mimi's shout out on the NACS. Like that's going to be a huge deal moving forward for the global adoption, because no one wants to buy, part of the problem with the legacy EVs currently is that the charging infrastructure sucks. And so, it'll be much lower hurdle to purchase a Ford F-150 Lightning when you have access to the NACS, the supercharger network. You don't have to rely on EVgo and all these other, charging systems that just don't work very well. So anyways, yeah, I definitely agree on that one. And then really looking forward to the progress of the AI front for Tesla. And also, energy is huge. Seeing Megapack grow, but as far as I just think the excitement factor for what artificial intelligence can do for the world through Tesla is it's incredible. It's fascinating. It's going to be world altering, and I can't wait.
Tony.
One of the interesting things about being in Tesla, at least for me, is that so much of it is future oriented, and so much of is looking forward to all the stuff that's exciting that's on the horizon, that in some ways it feels like when something big happens, it almost gets memory hold very quickly. Because when you first posed the question, I was having a hard time thinking of like all the crazy stuff that happened this year, but I was immediately thinking of all the stuff that's yet to come. So besides the things that everyone has already mentioned with the charging standard, and if I can tie one thought about the charging standard back to the topic of India, I think if like a big part of getting into India sooner rather than later would be just to establish NACS as a standard charging, like a standard plug for the future Indian EV market. Like that's, you talk about sowing a long-term seed, like that's a pretty big one. But since I was already mentioned a bunch, just the launch of the Cybertruck and the implications beyond just like, oh, it's a Cybertruck, but now everything we can think about what in the Cybertruck is going to be in future vehicles. Like, is that 48 volt going to be in the Model 2? Is the rear wheel steering or the drive-by-wire? I mean, chances are answers to these questions are yes, but that's another example, right? Of the day the Cybertruck event was happening, I was almost like, oh man, I'm kind of over the Cybertruck. Now all I want to do is think about the Model 2. So.
I love that. Alex.
The big one, like the bot and FSD haven't really kicked this year. Like we've seen a bunch of progress, but the one that we really did that rolled out this year and got big was Tesla Energy and the Megapack. The Megapack XL and the Megafactory in Lathrop. It was the one thing that really hit its ramp and hit its stride this year, and is the product of now and on that S curve adoption. So many exciting things that are coming, and like FSD 12 ramping and the bot almost there and the Cybertruck almost there. Unfortunately, the Semi rolled out at the beginning of the year and sort of fizzled. But Megapacks this year and Energy, just watching that number go up, and it's just going to keep going.
Great. Not legal advice at raw99.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of say or repeat what Hans said. It's been a pleasure getting to listen. I don't mean interact, but to listen, because there are so many bright people that have so many interesting views that I would not have been exposed to otherwise. So I thank them. And of course, I thank you for giving the platform for everybody and letting people speak, and graciously let people speak, even if you didn't agree with them, but you do it in such a kind and thoughtful way. It's really appreciated. And you opened the door for me to have my own channel. So that's because of you. So I thank you. So so there are a lot of
That's
pleasure.
Really kind. Thank you.
A lot of pleasure that comes from that. Of course, I have two quick questions, and I'm going to state my highlight. And I think if I was going to guess who's going to get this answer, I think it's going to be Hans. It's my guess. What do you call a magician who lost his magic? Answer: Ian.
I was going to say that.
Oh, okay, good.
I was going to say Ian.
Okay, very good. That was very good. And then secondarily, I went to the doctor yesterday with this suspicious looking mole. The doctor told me they all look the same. You should have left it in the garden. A mole is an animal, by the way. Just weird.
Oh, okay. Well,
okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, the first one was way
smarter
better
than others. It looked like some were okay. Whatever. So the only thing I was going to say is the purported expertise I have was legal, and my analysis of Tesla's legal year, I thought it was outstanding. It was the first year after which they said they would have a much more aggressive legal team put together. There were multiple trials. They didn't have any significant negative results. And I thought, and they're the target. Elon's obviously a target. So notwithstanding that, I think, the goal is to survive year to year legally. And I thought they did a great job. I think the next legal hurdle in the future will be the regulatory hurdle related to FSD. And that's going to be the real big issue, because that's going to be a huge monetary issue. But the rest, I think they survive beautifully, and I think they will in the future. So that's my review of the legal review of Tesla.
Well, that's fantastic. Where can people find your legal review of Tesla if they wanted to find not legal advice on a platform?
They could look at YouTube, KNOT, legal advice. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. By the way, that was very. Okay.
You imagine what my comments are on my videos? That's like 20 comments about bad jokes. That's all it is.
Well, you've said some very nice things. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. You're awesome. It's my pleasure. I mean, it's my honor and my pleasure to share this with you. This channel wouldn't be anything without any of you, everyone in the comments, everybody who watches, the gigantic majority of people that watch and never leave a comment, but I know you're there because I met you in person, and it's very humbling. It's a very humbling experience to be able to do this, and I love you guys very much, and seriously, I mean, none of this would be possible without y'all. So thank you so much. Maybe I saw you came off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I haven't seen mentioned very many places is that Tesla went up 116% in Europe. From January to November, and I think that's pretty awesome. You see them everywhere, and it's nice. Not in my garage yet, but one of these days. But I was thinking about what Tony said, that the Cybertruck, oh, I'm over it. I'm looking forward to the next thing. And I think that is the blessing of being a Tesla nerd. We have all these quarter earnings that we look forward to, and then they're almost always bad, and we're disappointed. But after a week, oh no, we can look forward to this. Oh, news about the bot, the Cybertruck is coming, the 48 volt, the new next generation, a new Gigafactory. There's always something to be excited about. And so many, I mean, if you just look at the width of all these things we're mentioning, it's mind-blowing. We're in for an exciting 10 years.
It's wild that it still feels like it's just getting started after all these years, and it's I think it's a very true statement. I think the thing that I found most interesting about 2023, I think Tesla, sort of this like arc of the company going from startup to becoming a bigger player to actually becoming truly mainstream. I think it sort of started this year-ish, and I think some of it had to do with a little bit in part to some of the other stuff that was happening adjacent to Tesla. So Elon purchasing X, some of the wild commentary that we heard from time to time from him, and that was both positive and negative. I think a lot of arguments could be made that in some ways it was more negative than positive. But I think what's very interesting is how the overall story is entering the zeitgeist a lot more as of late. When I talk to random people, it used to be, like if I think back 2-3 years ago, Tesla, Elon Musk, these things weren't really topics of discussion. Now they kind of are, sometimes in a negative light. But I think what's interesting is it's really entering the public. It's becoming mainstream. It truly is becoming mainstream. And I think I find that so fascinating, because as somebody who's been following as everybody else here has been following the story for a really long time, everyone always thought this was going to happen. Like this is bound to happen. We didn't know how and how it would look and how it would feel and what are the corners that it would impact. But it's happening. It's happening, and it's wild to watch. And I think there is there's so much more to come, not just with the technology aspect of it, but how it changes society, the resistance that's going to be there from a lot of folks that just don't feel comfortable with this happening, which there will be many. But watching that transition and talking about that transition, giving a platform to highlight that transition is truly what I'm most excited about in the coming years. And this year sort of made me think a lot about that. As somebody who has a platform, somebody who has a channel where I can sit down and share my thoughts and bring folks like you, to talk about this stuff freely and openly about this. It's so awesome because it really feels like a very unique time in history, and we all get to watch and we all get to talk about it. And then other folks can watch us talk about it, and they can talk about it, in the comment sections as well. So it's just awesome. It's freaking awesome. And I can't believe that. Yeah, I just can't believe it. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. I can't believe it. It's freaking wild. So yeah. And again, thank you guys so much. I mean, truly, this is such an honor to share this with you. Truly. All right. Any last thoughts before we do some Q&A to end the year? Okay, let's end the year. All right. Such an anticlimactic transition. Go ahead. All right, producer wife, my lovely producer wife and producer baby. Breakneck
Trent.
Thank you. Wow, I can't talk today. Thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. For 2024, 100% of YouTube member and X subscriptions will be donated to the charity of your choice at the end of the year, just like we did for 2023. So thank you very much, Trent. Really appreciate you. Buck, thank you so much for gifting a membership. Really appreciate you as well. Buck has been around since the very beginning. We actually I got to meet him in person for the Cybertruck delivery event. Hans, Buck, and I hung out for a little while there, so that was sick. It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming down, Buck. That was cool. And then they helped with.
I think a 200% donation would be more credible. Just my
wow.
opinion.
Okay. Damn, you put in pressure, bro. I got a baby on the way. You gotta let me make some money.
Don't we all?
I gotta set some aside for this child, bro. Come on now. I love that. All right. Here's a question from Dan. I question what Chinese phone companies have in the way of software competence. I am guessing that all use Android. This is a comment that Hans highlighted earlier on the stream. Go ahead and give us your thoughts, Hans. I know something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good point just because they tend to be mostly hardware manufacturers. And so, I don't feel like I have good visibility into what the operating systems they use. Obviously, Huawei makes a lot of digital componentry, and they have to have some software competence in order to create the products that they create. I don't know how much of that is based on, open source software. But it is a very valid question because without that piece, which, we've seen from a number of other players, just the continued reiteration that software is done almost exclusively best in Silicon Valley, that very few companies that operate outside of that one location are able to make software well. And that's one of the things about EVs is that they are software defined vehicles. And if you don't get software defined right, you can basically write off the rest of the technology that you have. And so, yeah, that's a great observation. It is something to watch out for. Obviously, we know that, BYD, NIO, Xiaopeng, these companies have figured out how to do it at least at a level. But we don't have any proof cases yet, especially like, in the Xiaomi car that we were talking about today, they are announcing that it'll be able to do self-driving. But yeah, it remains to be seen what quality or level that they can achieve in that. And so it is just something that Tesla has a distinct advantage of because they not only are operating, with the leadership of Elon, but they're able to pull the talent pool of really the best software developers in the world to be operating not only in the software 1.0 paradigm that they have had to use to develop software for the vehicle itself. But now, as we move into the area of just a world that's defined by software 2.0, as Andre Karpathy would talk about it, and these neural nets where the coding is very much the simple part, and the development of cutting edge capability really is based on collecting, gathering, curating, and processing large amounts of real world data. And that's not something that we're really getting good visibility on from the Chinese manufacturers, in an area that Tesla really has a huge lead over other people.
I was going to say also from a intelligence standpoint, to the extent their software is super great, but has the ability to spy in the United States, maybe a lot of their functionality is disabled in the United States. I know that NVIDIA was permitted to sell their chips, their AI chips, or their fastest chips in China today, but it's disabling certain functions. So whatever they get there is not going to be what we get here. And the same thing may work. And I assume Tesla, I remember, like, if they went by government buildings, there were certain restrictions that the Teslas were operating in China. So I guess you just don't get the full picture. If they can make money in China, that'd be great, but again, I think it's a limitation in the United States for it to stand out.
I remember reading an article that was about how dramatic the sales of VW's products, electric vehicle products in China, crashed, and that was largely driven by customer dissatisfaction with the software in the VW cars. So that could be an indicator by proxy of the relative software competence of the Chinese EV competitors as well as Tesla's.
That's a great point. Any other thoughts on this topic? 3, 2, 1. Next question, please. And yes, timed it perfectly. Ice Wendigo. Is the semi drive-by-wire? If not, why not? I don't think it is. Is it? Yeah, I don't think it is.
Well,
if it is, I don't think anyone's in a position to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I highly doubt that it is, that the ones that have been delivered are. The question is, I think we're going to see an entire product update before we see the next wave of deliveries. I think that the beta fleet essentially that they have in development with Pepsi is just a test mule platform, and I think that we'll see some updates. The question, I mean, they may be all completely under the hood. We may not get a whole lot of insight into what they are, but it will be curious to see if, now that they are launching the Cybertruck, if they do add some things like that to the future iteration of semi.
If it was, I'm pretty sure it would have been mentioned on the Jay Leno test drive, and I don't remember any of the Tesla engineers mentioning it on that video.
Yeah, I have a feeling it probably doesn't. Yeah, it probably doesn't have it because it has been in development for a while, I think. And I don't think they would have started with steer-by-wire back in, 2018, 2019, when they first announced this thing. So, but like Hans said, the next iterations, I wouldn't be surprised if every car, every new vehicle moving forward from Tesla will be steer-by-wire, including the compact, because you just get a lot of wins from that. And some of it will be 48-volt architecture, which enables steer-by-wire in a way. And yeah, so at some point I think it will be, but not now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you also needed a vehicle that was sell enough units to amortize the cost. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to start off with that kind of as your start.
You got it. Yeah, you don't want the semi to be your technology platform. You want it to be like you put all the pieces together you already know, and then you make it bigger, and then you sell it.
Yeah, we'll make as much money as Chevy that way.
Yeah, if they're lucky. All right, next question. And not bad. Tinelli, question. What's causing the big drop in stock price today? Is it bogus robot attacks worker headline, or is it just bouncing off the 260 resistance level? Boy, that headline, that was really what a perfect example of just how clickbait works. Tesla robot, because this is like a perfect example. This is an encapsulation of how mainstream media works, and doing YouTube. And I know both Bob and Hans and others that have YouTube channels know how this works. The way legacy media companies work, mainstream media, is literally no different than your favorite clickbait YouTube channel. Okay, so the way to think about anything you see related to this story is these publications know that Tesla is a keyword that performs really, really well. They also know that the Optimus robot is a thing that's futuristic. It's capturing people's mind when it comes to artificial intelligence. And then when you pair those things up with terrible thing that has happened, it hits our primal senses of being really drawn to fear and things like that. As, oh my God, I have to learn this so I don't get hurt by this. And you have the perfect headline. You have the perfect headline. And then of course the content of the article is, hey, it is actually a KUKA robot that from back in 2021, there was an incident at a factory, terrible thing that happened. Sometimes in manufacturing, that's what happens. Terrible things happen and it sucks. And Tesla has to ensure that never happens again. But that's the story, right? So as far as the stock price goes, I don't know. Honestly, I don't care. Short-term stuff. When it comes to the story for Tesla as an investor, I'm focused on 2030 plus, and none of this stuff really matters to me. Any thoughts from the panel? I just went on a rant. I'm sorry, you guys.
Yeah, I listened to some technical guys. I have no idea if they have any idea what they're talking about, honestly. So I'll give you my summary of what the technical guy says. This is why I find it funny. So he said it would go to about 265, and then it would go back, retest the 240 area, and then go back at the 300, and then probably retest again. But he said it also could go down to the mid hundreds. So that's my analysis of the technical guy. So somewhere between 300 and 100. That's my analysis.
Sounds like
There you go.
divination.
Nailed it. Any other thoughts on this?
I agree. That would have been my analysis too.
Okay.
So stupid.
It does make me think about like how much of the AI development that's in the humanoid Optimus robot might be cross-applied to industrial robots. I mean, it's unrelated to answering this question, but it does make me think about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That, once you give robots brains, like their ability to adapt to a different form factor will be easy. And yeah, I expect there to be kind of parallel development of increased quality automation of the robots that they have as they're working on Optimus as well. And I'm sure that actually some of this has already happened. Tesla's pretty good at software, as we've learned, and they've got a lot of them kind of crawling all over these factories and trying to make things work better. So yeah, they probably have better working robots than just about anybody.
Can you imagine like a robotic football league? How exciting and entertaining that would be.
That would be incredible. It's like a less violent version of what was that one show with like you put the robots together and they fight each other? You know what I'm talking about?
BattleBots.
BattleBots.
But I think that would only be interesting if the robots are still controlled by humans, because if the robots are entirely controlled by artificial intelligence and there's like no humans involved, it would just be too estranged. Like I saw something about that. I think Zach and Jesse once presented this on these like it's like car racing, and these guys are trying to develop an AI car race, and it's just like how does anyone get invested in that if they're not even piloted remotely by a human?
I don't know if you were sitting at a football game and linebacker robot Bob hit running back robot Bob, and there was a collision and parts were flying everywhere. That would be pretty fun, I would think.
One time.
You need a big squad.
All right. Next question.
Can I say something before we move on?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about all these FUD headlines. I was so happy to see that Tesla had a long reply on X today. And trying to explain, they did explain everything and how they were misinterpreted and everything, it made me really happy to see that.
Yeah, one of the things that I know folks like there's been a lot of folks out there that have been calling for the company to do a better job of refuting some of the headlines that are out there that are crafted not to really share the truth, but to maximize click-through rate and, maximize eyeballs on advertisers and stuff. And I think that kind of aligns with what Richard was saying with sort of some of the legal wins that Tesla has had this year, or not really any losses. This is sort of in line with that, where the company's trying to take a bigger effort and just dispelling how much free reign mainstream media has, in a sense, or just really all media in general, to capitalize on a story's popularity to drive eyeballs on something that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, we know, especially in the financial area, that the headlines are just nonsense. You could just write whatever you want, and I know for a fact that the TD Ameritrade, Benzinga, there's a bunch of publications. They will attest to the fact they post but don't read. So they'll just get something and put it up. They don't really care what it states because it brings viewers. They don't attest to the accuracy, but they will post anything.
100%. All right, next question. And question. Would Giga India produce the 3 or Y? I figured it would be Gen 3 with 3s and Ys being imported at a lower than 100% excess rate. Yeah, we sort of talked about this earlier in the stream. It's tough to know right now if the vehicle market is going to be that great for Tesla, at least to start. They have a giant population. They have a lot of people that theoretically could afford cars like the 3 and the Y, especially like the compact. But perhaps it might be more of an energy play to start and more of an infrastructure play. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Did you guys want to add anything else to it?
I'm sure the latter part of this question, being imported at the lower than 100% excess rate, that's the sticking point in most of the negotiations. Tesla is like, we're going to build this factory. Why don't you let us import these Ys for a 0% tariff? And the government's pushing back. It's like 10%. No, 5. No, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mostly the 2 and the 1, and maybe the 0.5.
I can't wait for the 0.5. It's going to be like an actual
is an
rickshaw.
electric unicycle, right?
Hell yeah. Best part is, or best car is no car. Best bike is no bike, or whatever you want to call it. All right. Next question. Let's do about 10 more minutes and then we'll call it a year. How about that? Tipu Master questioned, if the give and take on a Giga India isn't quite ready yet, could Tesla test the waters with a micro factory first? I don't know. I think I see Hans with a sort of face. What are your thoughts there? Interesting.
Well, I mean, I think of a mega pack factory as kind of a micro factory. So in that sense, yes. But I don't think they're going to do like a small car factory. Like if they're going to put in a car factory, it's going to be built to pump out 500,000 vehicles a year or more.
Yeah, I was going to say, as to a car factory, if they invest money, that's kind of they lose their leverage. So it's bad negotiating. And by the way, congratulations on your child to be, by the way. I'm not referring to the questioner, by the way. This is
Thank
not
you.
Tipo Master, not you. But if it applies, good luck to you too.
Yeah. We don't know. But thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very kind.
I feel like the ideal way that Tesla could roll out in India would be Megapack factory. And then, if they go down to deploying those Megapacks to support the grid, also using those to support charging stations so they can get like the NACS plug established. Yeah, I feel like that, and then being able to import Model Ys would be the starting move.
Possibly supercharger production or cathode materials, anode materials, lithium refinery.
That's an interesting idea, like a factory, like a supercharger factory that would supply both the Indian market but also be for export. That seems like the sort of mid-tier value product that India's economy maybe specialize in doing.
Maybe that will be the negotiation, that in exchange for putting in superchargers, they'll reduce the tax rate even further to make it more desirable for Tesla to come into India.
All right. Next question. Rimrunner from X. Nice. What are the key economic challenges that Tesla anticipates facing in 2024? This is a fantastic question. The way I think about this one is there's been a lot of talk about recession, no recession, recession, no recession. The impact of interest rates, especially in the U.S., and how quickly they raise, was that going to have a long-term economic impact in the U.S.? I don't know. I mean, this one. I don't know how to think about it, right? Because it's all really dependent on the global economy. We're going into an election year in 2024. We have a EV tax rate that's going to point of sale starting in 2024 in the United States. We have a Chinese economy that seems to still be growing, and EVs are growing like crazy there. Tesla's still performing really well in Europe. Energy is ramping fast. FSD version 12 is coming soon. The bot is under development. I don't know. Like, how are you guys thinking about this? It's a good question.
I was going to say you could pump the stock if you want, because if they do a half a dozen rate cuts, that just increases the value of the stock without doing anything. It also obviously increases demand and the ability of people to afford cars. And we're in the middle of an election year, so is there pressure on the Fed to lower interest rates at a faster pace than they would be inclined? Probably so, is my guess. So the challenges are, I guess, to me, is what the pace of reduction is. If they started reducing interest rates in March, as some people have claimed, the stock is going to really have a very big year.
Usually when they start rate cuts, that's generally when the most pain and the recession happens, right when they start cutting interest rates, historically at least. So I think the economic challenges are for their partners and suppliers, because we're already seeing a lot of zombie companies and a lot of pain through the industry, bankruptcies all over the place. So when they start those rate cuts and we get recessionary forces, their partners and suppliers is where I'd look at their challenges. But I mean, it's all upside for Tesla. Like everything's aligning, and they got like 6-7 things that are all aiming to ramp up. So, but the challenges I see are with partners and suppliers.
I think we also have a unique time because there was so much money that was flooded into the economy during COVID that was never done in the past. So, we've been predicting a recession, but how do you impact how that $7 trillion floats through the economy, and what's the impact of that? And, so I've never been comfortable with comparing now to the past, because it's the same thing with the difference between the long-term interest rates and the short-term. There's a huge gap. That's always a recession, but we've never had COVID and we never dumped so much money in the economy. So does that smooth it out over time? I really think it's unknown. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, I think it's just any economic challenges, I believe, are going to be mostly macro. It's going to be macro, because I think the demand is there, the product lineup is going to be there, the forces on getting costs down and ramping up factories and getting the per unit costs down and all that stuff is there. So for me, it's 100% macro. So if we go into a global recession, that's going to be a economic challenge. I think Tesla will still be fine navigating through it. They're very well positioned from a cash perspective, from the ability to drop prices and all that stuff. But yeah, it seems like 2024 could potentially be a very good year for the company, just how things are lining up, especially with interest rates potentially coming down. Go ahead, Tony.
I guess this is more a question to you guys than a direct answer to this, but if interest rates hold at the way they are now, do you think that Tesla will be able to maintain its long-term 50% year-over-year growth in deliveries target for 24?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're doing 50% for next year. I think they'll probably do 2.3 million, which is probably closer to 30-40%. I think the 50% CAGR is dependent on CAGR, meaning compounded annual growth rate, is heavily dependent on the compact car. I think that's the only way they're able to achieve that. I think Tesla will maximize production regardless of what the interest rates are. With the current, because I think we got guidance from the company in the last quarter is like, hey, we're gonna, and this could have been a sandbag too, right? Because this is sort of like there's some alarm bells going off. It's like, hey, how are you sandbagging here? Especially with some of the other commentary that was made by the company. But we're going to use our existing factors. We're going to ramp them to hell, and we're going to get all the cost out, and we're going to get Cybertruck ramped. We're going to lay the groundwork for compact car. And I think within that, they'll just find the right price to sell the product, and then the margins are the margins. And I think that's just how Tesla operates, is just get every unit into the field that you can so that once self-driving is ready, you turn that on, and then the profit you get from that will be multiples of the profit you lost from the price decreases, which is like something that some investors were poo-pooing on earlier this year. They were saying, hey, this is a terrible strategy, but like it's such a brilliant strategy to get ahead of everybody else. Just get your units out there, and then once you actually have your differentiator, your giant differentiator, which is self-driving, then at that point you're fine. So I think in my opinion is that it's interest rate agnostic. They'll just get the units out that they have planned for regardless.
And realistically, whatever challenges Tesla faces economically, the other OEMs, that's to like tenfold. Because they're just trying to get a business up and going. If there's a recession, they're not going to be able to spend money on that, which means they're decaying another year or two down the road, and it just extends the gap between Tesla and those companies.
But what do you think about the Osborne effect when the new model comes out? Could that be a threat to the Model 3? We have talked about before how the prices are Model Y and Model 3 are getting closer in price. And if there's a new model, they have to do that in a smart way.
So the way I'm thinking about that is I think the Model 3 refresh will help differentiate the Model 3 from the compact car. And the compact car versus the Model Y is already differentiated enough, but there's rumors that China's working on a refresh for the Y as well. But I think the compact is going to be its own. It's just going to be a Golf. It's going to be like a Golf, or even smaller than a Golf. It's going to be a 2x2 sort of seating arrangement. It's going to be like a Mini Cooper style. Maybe not that small, but it's going to be like that form factor. But from a release perspective, I 100% agree with you that the Osborne effect could be an issue if they announce the compact car ahead of time, if it's not differentiated enough. Like if I were Tesla, if I had the ability to set the strategy, I would say lay out the groundwork, get your manufacturing lines up, get 1,000 alpha units out there, test them. And then the second you're ready to deliver the first cars, just open up the configurator online. Be like, oh, guys, you can order your compact, first come, first served, first deliveries next month. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's how you sell the compact car.
Now, my concern would be an Osborne on the Y. Because now I know Tesla, I think, came out and denied the existence of that program in China, even though it was announced. It wasn't announced by Tesla. It was announced by somebody else. But I think that's the concern. If they come out, they're going to have a refresh come out in the end of summer. Are people not going to buy the current Y and just wait until the refresh is out?
Especially in that market where folks really prioritize a rebrand, like sort of like the new version of a car. I think that's a great point. Even if it's true, Tesla has to come out and said it's not true to prevent that from happening. Which they've done before in China. They're like, hey, this is not true, and it's like one piece of it wasn't true, but like the rest of it was. So I think that's the kind of situation we have here. All right, let's do one more question and then we'll wrap it up for the year. How's that sound? Last questions. Oh, Buck with a $5 super chat. Here we go. Democrats hate Elon. Republicans hate EVs. Which side is best for EVs and Tesla? Whoa. What do you think about that? Richard, do Democrats hate Elon?
Yeah. But notwithstanding this, so my kids are here. All my kids are here with me, and a couple grandkids, and we're
Awesome.
out. We're in Southern California, a Democratic place. It's like when I was a kid in the 60s, I'd go out and I'd look at cars. They were all Ford, GM. Now, every other car, literally, it was a joke, was a Tesla. And so we're in a Democratic area. It is by far the most prominent car and increasing. So I don't think politics has, if you're interested in buying an EV, you're going to buy a Tesla. What's what it come down to, because you have no choice, really.
So which one do you think is best for EVs, or do you think about it differently?
I think they both suck. Honestly.
Yeah.
So you'd have to find some individual candidate who might have a particular liking for them. But from a party standpoint, Republicans, the claim against them is they're interested in oil and those kind of industries. So that's anti-EVs. And Democrats hate Elon because they hate Elon. So somehow that's impacted their view of the product, which also makes no sense. I think you just have to pick and choose. I know Trump is not an EV fan either. So I don't think it's a either or. I think it's really, you have to be selective and find somebody who fits the bill.
Mimi.
Trump said he will only be dictator for one day, and that day he will drill and drill and drill. So Democrats hate Elon, but they still made it possible with all this money that is coming Tesla's way with the IRA. So they believe in climate change, and they do things to help society, the same mission as Tesla. So I think in the long run it will still be better. When it comes to Tesla, I think it would be good if Tesla was as little political as possible, and that means also its CEO.
Any other thoughts?
So I think about that gentleman from the FCC who did that Twitter Spaces, right? And he was talking about how they felt like they had an open signal to go after Elon. And I think a contrast between Democrat control, Republican control is that if Democrats are in control, they might do that, but there's still limited constraints of like what's legal. Like, whereas if Republicans were in control, they might go beyond the constraints of what's legal. But also, if you look at how Trump was as a president, it's more likely they would be too lazy to actually do anything of like importance or of like material impact in going after Elon or Tesla or whatever. All of that said, I actually think the best outcome for Tesla or EVs in general would be if someone like Gavin Newsom came in as a substitute for Joe Biden, which I think is very possible, and ends up becoming the Democratic nominee.
Yeah.
Hans or Alex?
The big sticking point is the union. But when all those companies go bankrupt, the union pressure sort of dies off. But I mean, that's not going to happen anytime soon. That'll take another election cycle. In 2028, when all the unions are broke and bankrupt, it'll be a different story. But in 2024, it'll be interesting because there is a bunch of union pressure on there. It was interesting. Elon, he sort of changed. The Twitter thing was sort of an appeal to the Republican base. He found an issue of like free speech and the woke mind virus and whatnot. And he went and tried to solve that problem for him because he can, to try and get them on board with the Cybertruck ramp coming in, and just sort of solve the problem he can for that demographic of people, that conservative base, and be like, instead of this like transition the world to sustainable energy, you're like, I can also solve other problems, and sort of took an olive branch and did what he had to do to sort of bring those into the Tesla fold. But just yeah, I don't know which side's better.
By the way, Tony, I think Biden, and of course, I won't admit who I voted for, but Biden, I think, is playing Weekend at Bernie's, I believe. That's my guess.
He's doing a damn good job. Hans, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I would love to see someone come in and just eliminate all the subsidies for everybody, including oil and gas. And that's one of the things they criticize the EV subsidies, but they don't realize how much some of these other technologies are subsidized as well. And then, yeah, if that were the case and we could just let the free market kind of solve this problem, economics of renewable energy and EVs are going to win over the long term. And that really is, that's hard to compete with. That said, I think that the Republican Party, the GOP as an establishment, is as beholden to oil and gas as the Democratic Party is to unions. And so, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, and they both suck. So on that point, I would definitely agree with Richard. And I don't know. Yeah, like it's pretty silly to me for Trump to be just all out dogging on EVs right now when Elon has done, so many things that are so positive for his constituency and his base. And yeah, that part is silly and frustrating. Of course, pretty much everything he does is silly and frustrating. So, there's that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is the one thing that I've seen from some politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, like for example, Gavin Newsom announcing the engineering headquarters in California with Elon in the middle of a lot of like right-wing rhetoric that was coming out of Elon. I think that was an example that there are politicians out there, regardless of what you think of Gavin Newsom. I think ultimately what politicians love the most, in my opinion, is power and access to grow their ability to run for higher offices. And the best way to do that and get votes, and the best way to do that is through economic prosperity. And the one thing that I think Tesla is becoming is a powerhouse for economic output in regions. So I think whichever side embraces that, and, for example, the Governor Abbott in Texas with the Giga Texas initiative, even though you still can't buy a freaking car in Texas, which is so stupid, freaking dumb, right? Stuff like that is really what's going to dictate Tesla and EV success in the U.S., regardless of party. But I think Richard's sentiment is the correct one when you're thinking about the extremes, is that one party is beholden to one thing, the other party is beholden to the other thing, and they both suck. And they'll say they'll say things in the public eye. Like, for example, the Trump example of, EVs are the worst thing ever. And he'll keep saying that. And, Biden will continue to say things about how Tesla needs to be unionized and, we'll do everything we can. We have ways to investigate Elon, but the actions in the background is really what's going to dictate Tesla's and EVs being successful in this country. And for what I'm seeing so far, what I'm starting to see play out is that I think Tesla is going to have a lot of influence when it comes to, hey, if you let me open up shop in your state with some operations, you're going to get a lot more happier people because your economy is going to be better because this is where we're going. So are we going to be friends or not? And I think that's what's going to dictate all the relationships moving forward. I could be naive in thinking that, at least in the background, right? Front face, Elon, Tesla will become huge wedge issues for political parties to drive and sort of get their bases to be amped up. But in the background, how these deals happen is really what's going to dictate what's happening. Mimi's example was perfect. The same party that is trying to, openly say we're going to investigate Elon on stuff is the one that allowed the IRA to happen, which is going to lower the POS sale for every single Tesla by $7,500 as long as they qualify. So, yeah, actions versus words. Alex, you're off mute.
The one issue that I would look at is towards deregulation, and the side that gets out of the way of business and lets them do their thing is probably beneficial to Tesla. They have the capacity to deal with any regulation and that comes up, but it slows them down. So the side that is more into deregulation and free markets is better for Tesla and EVs.
I agree.
Except that deregulation in the securities markets led to excessive shorting at Tesla. So for us investors, it's not exactly black and white. We need the right kind of regulation, not excessive regulation.
Yeah. And
I agree.
True.
to further strengthen this thought of like dichotomy and what the pros and cons are from either side, I think a Republican administration would be less likely to push NHTSA to slow down anything on FSD or like prosecute stuff against autopilot. The Republican administration would also be less supportive of development of critical materials, critical minerals, and lithium infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. So those are some of the trade-offs.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point there that Tony made, is that there's quite a push towards deregulation to speed up the ability for mining projects to happen in the United States so that we can get things like spodumene, lithium mines going. And those kind of get tied up hand in hand with our ability to do oil and gas stuff. And so that's one of the reasons why, gosh, why am I blanking out on his name? The senator from West Virginia who is kind of key on the IRA
Manchin?
bill.
Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
Manchin.
So he's the one who was really pushing forward, trying to get a deal done to speed up the regulatory process to get those. For him, it's oil and gas things done, even though he's a Democrat because he's from West Virginia, trying to really pave the way for coal plants. But I think that, to the point that we've already made, that the economics for renewable energy win over the long term. And while we've had these very stifling regulations to keep us from doing things like mining here in the United States, if we actually lift those regulations now, that what we will see actually is a faster transition to being self-sufficient on renewable energies and a faster, development of our supply chain and all that. And that will actually hurt oil and gas over the long run. And so on the one hand, you would think that that was one of the things that Trump did really well in his first term, was he did initiate a lot of deregulation in a lot of areas, and that was really good for the economy. And so, like, you could say that maybe there's a chance that we get that, but because it would be tied to oil and gas, I think we would see it because oil and gas companies will think that that's a positive for them, even though it's actually accelerating, the ability for us to get off of oil and gas. So that actually is a really good point, Tony.
And that senator from West Virginia is not running for re-election. The irony is so.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, I'd take Manchin
ahead.
for president over Biden any day.
All right. We're in an hour and 50 minutes. Thank you all so much for this wonderful episode. Likely to be the last one for the year, unless something insane happens tomorrow. I want to thank every single person on this panel: Mimi, Hans, Tony, Alex, Bob /Not Legal Advice /Richard @raw999 on X. Make sure to follow everybody on this panel on X and on YouTube if you can find them. Any parting words before we sign off from the panel?
Yeah. Happy early birthday to Richard, aka Bob.
Happy birthday! When is your birthday?
Happy birthday.
Birthday's tomorrow. My
Oh
son,
my goodness!
my oldest son's birthday is today, and mine's tomorrow. And
That's fantastic.
I officially become a senior citizen tomorrow.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
I would have thought you were there like 10 years ago.
I know.
I'm kidding.
I thought it was 20 years ago, to be honest, but whatever. I wanted to wish everybody a happy and healthy new year, to everybody, all the panel members, their families, everybody out there, the community. And again, it's been a pleasure in 2023, and I look forward to it in 2024.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
thank you to everybody. It's been great to be part of the community, to be a mod, to be here. And I'm looking forward to an even more exciting Tesla year, if possible.
Yeah. Alex, I saw you went off mute.
3% discount on Tesla stock today.
Okay. Not investment advice. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, everybody in the comment section, mods, as always, and everybody on the panel. Thank you all so much for being with us this entire year. 2024 is going to be sick. And last but not least, how could I forget producer wife and producer baby? Thank you both very much for the excellent work this year. And we have a lot more coming in 2024. Love every single one of you. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye. Don't forget the name.